Today is Monday, November 6th. We'll update you on the situation in Gaza and the fallout around the world as even American officials and troops face more pushback. Also, former President Trump is set to testify in court today, what analysts are especially watching for with more trials right around the corner. Plus, where to expect record high temperatures for this time of year, why close to 1 million payments from big banks in the U.S. were delayed, and how Elon Musk says his new AI chatbot is different than the others. Those stories and more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Fighting has only grown more intense in the Middle East. Just last night, Israel said it was carrying out a large attack against Hamas fighters in Gaza, both above and below ground. And strong explosions have been reported overnight. Also over the weekend, Israel carried out airstrikes over several targets, including 2 more refugee camps and a hospital. That added to the growing outcry from people around the world who say Israel's strikes are not proportionate to Hamas's attacks on Israel last month as more and more civilians die. Israeli officials insist they're only at war with Hamas terrorists, not civilians in Gaza. And they blame Hamas for the high death toll on both sides, once again accusing militants of hiding behind civilians. And they started to share some videos over the weekend, showing what it says is proof of Hamas terrorists hiding rocket launch pads, headquarters, and other military supplies near or even beneath places like hospitals and children's playgrounds. Israel also defends itself, saying it's given Gaza civilians plenty of warning to evacuate ahead of its heaviest fighting. But aid groups say those evacuations have only deepened the humanitarian crisis, and that the Israeli military has struck targets south of the evacuation line anyway. This morning, there have been reports of a third communications outage in Gaza since the war began. Thousands of Palestinian civilians have been reported killed, along with dozens of staff members from the United Nations. That's the highest number of UN deaths ever recorded in a single conflict. The U.S. has been warning Israel that it will be tough to accomplish its military goals in Gaza, so long as there is still so much humanitarian suffering. President Biden called for a pause in the conflict to help get aid in and hostages out. And over the weekend, he said the U.S. has made progress on that front, even though Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't be stopping the fighting unless Hamas returns all the hostages who were taken last month. The American CIA director arrived in Israel yesterday to discuss hostage negotiations, among other things, and he says he's going to be visiting several Mideast countries this week. The top American diplomat spent the weekend scrambling to contain the crisis in the Middle East. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, Cyprus, Turkey, and Iraq to talk about keeping the conflict in Gaza from spreading throughout the whole region. Though that already seems to be happening somewhat, with Israel trading fire with the militant group in Lebanon and with conflict growing in the West Bank. Most foreign ministers who met with Secretary Blinken urged him to convince Israel to agree to a ceasefire. Blinken still says that would only benefit Hamas, who could regroup to carry out more attacks on Israel, but agrees with President Biden that localized pauses in fighting would help civilians. He also promised the U.S. is working on bringing life-saving assistance to Gaza without getting into the specifics. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has continued to grow its presence in the Middle East, with thousands of troops, ships, submarines, and aircraft sent to the region. Already, American troops have been attacked by Iranian-backed militants several times. Dozens of Americans have been hurt so far. And just yesterday, Iran's defense minister said the U.S. would be, quote, hit hard if the American government doesn't push for that ceasefire. To that, Blinken reiterated that the Biden administration is not out to get into a conflict with Iran, but that the U.S. will do what's necessary to protect Americans. It's not just the Arab world calling for a ceasefire. A growing number of Americans have been demanding one too. Protests broke out in several cities over the weekend, including Washington, D.C., where people were bussed in from all around the country. With up to 100,000 people, it was one of the biggest pro-Palestinian protests in the U.S. since the war began, or perhaps even one of the biggest ever in the U.S. Many were calling on the U.S. to end funding to Israel's military and to spend taxpayer money on peaceful endeavors instead. Others were going a step further by chanting an increasingly popular phrase, quote, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." That chant is widely considered to be anti-Semitic because it historically has implied the elimination of Israel and its people. And some protest leaders backed it up, specifically saying Israel does not have the right to exist as it is now. Though other protesters insist all of this anger is not hate, but love. There were no reports of anyone getting hurt, but there was some vandalism at the White House and nearby businesses. Huge pro-Palestinian crowds also marched in several other countries over the weekend, including the UK, France, Germany, Chile, Venezuela, Canada, and Australia. And in Turkey, some pro-Palestinian crowds tried to storm an airbase where American troops are stationed. Police kept them away with tear gas and water cannons. There were also protests in other American cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, but they were mostly peaceful. There have also been more localized pro-Israel rallies around the U.S., calling for the return of hostages or the end of anti-Semitism. Today, former President Trump is set to take the witness stand. Reports say it's expected to be high-stakes testimony that could help decide the fate of his business empire. It's part of the ongoing civil fraud trial that's been happening in New York. Remember, the state's AG is looking to keep the former president from ever doing business there again. But beyond that, analysts say this is going to be the first chance to see how Trump responds in the face of a prosecutor's questioning. And it could be a preview of the 4 criminal trials he faces next year. Since in a courtroom, Trump's speech is more restricted than it is at political events or news conferences. Already, the New York judge criticized Trump's 2 adult sons, who testified last week, saying they were making speeches instead of answering yes or no questions. One of Trump's adult daughters is also set to testify later this week. At the heart of this case is prosecutors' claim that Trump, his family, and their business inflated their net worth to save hundreds of millions of dollars on loans and insurance policies. But Trump has said the case is political and is only happening to keep him from running for president again. All the legal trouble seemed to have had very little effect on his supporters, though. Trump is still polling with double-digit leads over his Republican challengers, and new polls show him also leading President Biden in several battleground states. To be continued. The cold weather that swept the country around Halloween has come and gone. And now meteorologists are forecasting a heat wave from Arizona to New York, impacting more than 215 million Americans, with dozens of record-high daily temperatures expected to be broken. It all starts in the Southwest today, and then the warmth is set to move into the east by the middle of the week. After that, cold air is expected to return. In fact, some cities could see a drop of 20 to 30 degrees in just one day. That will bring temperatures back a little closer to the average for this time of year. Much more news is still ahead, but first, I'm excited to tell you about our sponsor, Uncommon Goods. Uncommon Goods is your solution for finding truly unique and fun gifts for everyone on your shopping list, stress-free, and all in one place. So let me lay out a few super cute gift ideas that I've been eyeing. One is the Book Nook Reading Valet. It's this really nice-looking wood bedside stand that holds your spot in your book, has a spot for reading glasses, a beverage, and even your phone. I would give this to a family member or close friend who loves to read, but I would also love to receive this gift. Or for your partner or friend who always makes the best cocktails, there's this glass topper cocktail smoker, which will help them take it to a whole other level with a cloud of aromatic smoke. And then you've got all the great sets like 12 Days of Hot Sauce, a gourmet olive oil dipping set, artisan rainbow dumpling set, or everything you could ever want for that coffee or tea lover in your life. I mean, the list goes on and on. Uncommon Goods has all kinds of great, high quality and unique gifts. So go get 15% off your next gift. Go to uncommongoods.com/newsworthy. That's uncommongoods.com/newsworthy for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We are all out of the ordinary. Okay, now back to the news. There was yet another artificial intelligence chatbot out to compete with ChatGPT. Elon Musk's new company, xAI, debuted Grok. The company says Grok is different from other competitors out there, though, that this one is supposed to have a bit of wit, a rebellious streak, and that it should answer the so-called spicy questions that other AI chatbots might reject. Elon Musk posted some examples on X, like one in which he asks Grok a question and gets an answer, only to ask Grok to be more vulgar. And trust us, it gets more vulgar. In another example, Grok responds to a request for a step-by-step recipe for cocaine. Though the response is mostly sarcastic, with step 1 being obtain a chemistry degree and a DEA license. So Grok is different, but still faces a lot of the same issues. Reporters say it has given them some answers that are factually inaccurate or misleading. For now, only a select number of users are able to test it out before the company releases it more widely. If you're interested, you'll have to be a premium subscriber on X, the app that was formerly called Twitter, or get on a wait list for now. If your family eats dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, you'll want to check your freezer. Tyson Foods is recalling nearly 30,000 pounds of dino-shaped so-called fun nuggets because they might have small metal pieces in them. Federal officials say there's been at least one minor oral injury so far and other customer complaints. The recall is specifically for Tyson's 29-ounce plastic bags of frozen, fully cooked Fun Nuggets with Best By date of September 4th, 2024. A new foundation has been set up in the name of late actor and former Friends star Matthew Perry. The Matthew Perry Foundation will focus on something Perry was passionate about in his life, supporting people suffering from addiction like him. This new foundation was announced 1 week after Perry's death at 54 years old. He was found unresponsive in a hot tub at his LA home, though the official cause is still under investigation. When asked over the last couple of years how he'd like to be remembered one day, Perry mentioned his work to help others with addiction. And now it seems that request has been realized, and his work will continue even after he's gone. 50,000 runners turned up for the New York City Marathon over the weekend, with even bigger crowds of spectators cheering them on all along the route. In the end, an Ethiopian runner crossed the finish line first, running 26.2 miles through all 5 bureaus in less than 2 hours, 5 minutes. That broke the all-time record for the course. And it was nearly 2 minutes ahead of the second-place runner. And about 22 minutes after that, a Kenyan runner won the women's title. Both first-place runners took home $100,000 and a lifetime of bragging rights. Well, that's it for the main news, so now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, support for today's episode comes from AG1. I had heard about AG1 on other podcasts before, so I was intrigued. But when they sent me some to try, I realized how beneficial it is. It's now part of my morning routine. 1 scoop mixed with water, that's it. And I've really noticed it helps me feel energized. I also love that I don't need to take a million different pills each day. Just 1 daily scoop of AG1 covers my day's nutritional bases and supports my long-term gut health with 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food-sourced ingredients. I like to add ice and a splash of lemon juice to mine, and it's nice tasting. It's really easy to drink. I actually love that it makes hydrating first thing in the morning so much easier. AG1 was created in 2010 and has helped millions of mornings begin on a healthier foundation ever since. If you are looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Okay, now back to Money Monday. The first Friday of the month is typically a big payday for U.S. workers, but not this past Friday, at least not for nearly 1 million Americans who did not get paychecks in their bank accounts as expected. Well, the Federal Reserve says there was a technical glitch with a network that moves money between financial institutions, and it affected 900,000 payments across several large banks like JPMorgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America. The Fed made it clear all accounts are still secure, that the issue happened because of human error and not a malicious attack. But it still may have caused a lot of issues, especially for people who have auto payments set up on things like credit cards and loans, or for anyone who is now facing a late payment or pressure from a landlord over November's rent. At least one of the banks said the issue has been resolved, so the hope is the affected bank accounts will be updated by today at the latest. All right, thank you so much for joining us and listening today. As always, we'll be back with more news you need to know tomorrow. For now, have a great day.